20 signs that you're not eating enough carbohydrates for performance, testosterone, hormonal health, muscle growth, fat loss, all of the good stuff. Let's see. Number one, not having a great pump when you train, especially if you're doing high reps and stuff like that. So I'm going to put that one at high key, a sign of low carbohydrate intake. You'd be surprised, guys. A lot of you guys are not eating enough carbs. You're getting enough protein. You're getting a lot of fats for the most part, but you're not getting enough carbohydrates. People really underestimate how many carbs you need, especially if you're active, if you lift weights frequently, you run, you spar, you have a martial art on the side, you do a lot of cognitive work. You need a high carb diet. Don't let the carnivore idiots brainwash you. So if you're not getting a great pump in the gym, that is one of the big signs that you're flat, right? If your muscles look flat, you look depleted. There's a reason why bodybuilders carb up before the show, guys, right? Helps put a lot of water into the muscle, gives you that full look, and it increases training performance. So if you have horrible pumps, obviously on high rep days, right? On low rep days, you're not going to get a great pump. That's a high key sign that you're not getting enough carbohydrates in your diet. Good carbs, that is. Next, you have, terrible power output, right? Whether it's the assault bike, whether it's sprinting, any anaerobic exercise. If you notice that your power output, right, measured by watts, is going down, that is a high key sign of a low carb diet. Because again, the main fuel source for this kind of activity is glucose. Next, we have cortisol. If you have high cortisol levels, right, you feel anxious all the time, you actually have high cortisol levels in blood work, that is another high key sign of low carbohydrates in your diet, right? Some people eat 200 grams of carbs and think it's enough. Meanwhile, you look at the actual daily routine and the amount of training they do, their training intensity, and they need 500, 600 grams of carbs. The research is clear on that, guys. You'll be surprised how important carbohydrates are when you are active. Now, if you're sedentary, it's a different story, but then again, men shouldn't be sedentary. So again, if your cortisol is too high, that's usually your body trying to deal with your low-ass carbohydrate diet. And of course, cortisol will go up to break down muscle tissue and try to convert that into glucose. Same thing with the protein that you eat. A lot of the protein you eat is being wasted because your body's converting that to glucose because you're not eating enough carbs. So high cortisol is a big sign. And the reverse is also true, right? One of the fastest ways to reduce cortisol is to eat a high carb diet. Next, if you have belly fat, this kind of belly fat, right? Believe it or not, that is a sign of low carbs, right? I'm not going to put it higher because obviously it could just be that you overeating. But why is having this kind of body fat distribution as a man a sign of low carbs? Once again, it goes back to cortisol, right? If your carbs are too low, your body's going to be constantly pumping out cortisol. And that's going to lead to this kind of cortisol belly scenario here. A lot of you skinny fat motherfuckers have this. So high carb diet, but keep in mind when I say high carb diet, it's always relative to your activity, your lifestyle. If you're sedentary, of course you don't fucking need a high carb diet. Next, you have, the fuck is this one? I always forget. Oh yeah, not being able to go into deep sleep. So meaning you're falling asleep, but your sleep is not deep. When you look at your trackers, whatever, you're not getting enough REM sleep. And your quality of sleep pretty much is trash. That is a high key sign of low carbs. Yes, believe it or not, high carbs allow your body to go into deep sleep for many reasons, right? Like I said, it lowers cortisol, lowers SNS activation, allows you to go into that parasympathetic nervous system mode. It helps you, increase serotonin levels, which is great for sleep. And believe it or not, it also helps with prolactin, the good side of prolactin, not the bad side. Everyone thinks prolactin is all evil, terrible. You need some prolactin to have deep sleep. So that's another sign of not eating enough carbohydrates. Next one, which is very obvious, low energy. If you're tired all the goddamn time, even though you feel like you're eating enough calories, right? That is a sign of low carbs. Now, of course, I'm not putting it higher because it could be due to many things. But if you're not eating enough carbohydrates, even if you have enough calories in your diet, you might have fatigue and things like that, mainly because, your body has to constantly, look for the glucose elsewhere, either from your protein, your fat, your fat sources. And like I said, if you exercise a lot, that's not an efficient way to get glucose, right? You don't want your body to have to convert protein and muscle into glucose. You want to just provide that bitch. So being tired all the time, especially if you're an athlete or like say you're very active, that could be a sign of low carb diet. Next, you have being dizzy. Believe it or not, That is also a sign of low carb. I'm going to put that one at low key. It's a low key sign of a low carb diet, right? Because obviously the brain is hungry for glucose. I don't want to hear the fucking keto zealots with, oh, you're not adapted, you're not adapted yet. Shut up, right? The brain needs glucose, right? Just because the brain can adapt over time, right, by using other things, that doesn't mean that it prefers to do it. So if you're feeling dizzy sometimes, and again, assuming that you have a very active lifestyle, it could be that you're not getting enough carbohydrates. I'm not putting higher because it could be due to many, many other things. So next, believe it or not, having high estrogen. I'm going to put that at low key. It's a low key sign of a low carb diet that you're not getting enough carbs. Now, why? Simple. Because if you're not getting enough carbs, chances are you're also not getting enough fiber. If you're not getting enough fiber, you almost guarantee to have high estradiol, right? The main estrogen, right? So if you have high estrogen in blood work or high estrogen symptoms, right, like gyno and a bunch of other stuff, which by the way, gyno is not just from estrogen, prolactin plays a role as well, and also having low androgens. But yeah, if you're not getting enough carbs, chances are your fiber intake is trash. And if your fiber intake is trash, chances are your estradiol is going to be higher than usual compared to your testosterone. And of course, you don't want estrogen at 0, but you don't want it to be too elevated. Next, being skinny fat. Again, believe it or not, that is a sign of low carbs. Why is it not higher? Because of course, it could be due to other things. But the reason why having a low carb diet relative to your activity level can give you that skinny fat physique is, you guessed it, cortisol again, right? Cortisol is going to be constantly up to try to convert protein and muscle into the glucose that you're not getting because you're on a low ass carb diet, because you wanted to listen to keto bros and carnivore bros like a fucking moron. And then you're going to lose muscle and have that, terrible skinny fat combination, right? Skinny arms and the cortisol belly. Trust me, guys, this is so prevalent. Next, you have not being able to fall asleep fast, right? Believe it or not, that is a sign of a low carb diet. Why? For the same reason I mentioned earlier. The cortisol levels being too high, your serotonin levels not being high enough, so tryptophan has a hard time making it across the blood-brain barrier, so that's keeping you in a, low serotonin state. Your anxiety is going to be high, your GABA is going to be low. So again, high carb diet, great for falling asleep quickly. Now, while we're on the topic of sleep, here's the other one. Sleep duration. So let's say you're able to fall asleep, but you somehow keep waking up in the middle of the night and you wonder why. You go, I don't know what's going on. I just keep waking up. It's not to pee. It's not to whatever. That could be a sign of low carbs. Why? Because, again, the inconsistent blood sugar levels will wake you up, right? The brain needs glucose. The fact that cortisol is going to be high, that's also going to wake you up because, remember, cortisol is needed to wake up and stay awake and alert. But if you have a low carb diet, well, guess what? It's going to wake you up while you're sleeping. Next, mood swings. That is a sign of low carbs, and this one is very well documented. Again, because of the fluctuations in blood glucose, which makes it hard for your brain, your frontal cortex to be specific, to calm yourself down and, control your impulses. So you're going to have mood swings, you're going to be irritable, you're going to lash out at your friends and family members, whatever. Make sure you're getting enough carbs. Again, glucose is so underrated. Next, having low DHT levels. Yes, that is a sign of low carbs. I'm not going to put it higher because you could be on finasteride. That could be the reason why you have low DHT. You could be on other things that lower 5-alpha reductase activity. But carbohydrates are one of the best ways to increase DHT, right? And I don't want to see you hairless motherfuckers in the comment section again, right? We're talking about DHT in the context of somebody who does not have, the genetics and environmental factors that lead to hair loss. Somehow you motherfuckers still believe that DHT is a bad hormone, but whatever. Let's see. So that's another sign. If you have low DHT levels, that could be a sign that you don't have enough carbohydrates to keep upregulating that, 5-alpha reductase and NADPH pathway. Next, we have constipation issues. I want to put that at low key. It's a low key sign of a low carb diet. Back to the fiber discussion. If you have a low carb diet, chances are you're not getting enough fiber. If you're not getting enough fiber, chances are you're going to have constipation. And you're probably going to have poor gut health as well. So that's a low key sign. I'm not going to put it high because it could be due to other things, of course. So eat your fruits and vegetables, guys. Next, hitting the wall while training. You guys know what that feels like. You're training. At first, everything feels good. And out of nowhere, you just hit that wall. You just feel like your energy just got zapped. That is a high key sign of a low carb diet, right? Especially if you're hitting the wall too early, right? Again, it's a sign there's not enough glucose, especially if you're doing a lot of anaerobic stuff. Like say, it could be sparring, could be doing anything that's, anaerobic. If you hit a wall, chances are you're on a low carb diet. And sure enough, it's what a lot of people experience. Next, IGF-1. If you have low IGF-1 levels, that is a sign that you have a low carb diet compared to what you think. And keep in mind, IGF-1 is one of the most anabolic peptides out there. Obviously, it's important to activate mTOR, build muscle, do a bunch of other cool stuff. Watch my videos on IGF-1, but you need a high carb diet to have high levels of IGF-1, right? And I didn't include it here, but also back to in fact, where is it? Could have sworn I had it. Yeah, it's right here. Testosterone. If you have low testosterone, to be specific, if you have low free testosterone, that is a high key sign of a low carb diet, right? So you could have high total testosterone on a low carb diet, but if you look closely, you'll notice that you probably have low free testosterone, which is what actually matters, because obviously carbs are important for modulating SHBG. So that is a high key sign of low testosterone. Sorry, of a low carb diet, right? If you have low free T. I don't care about your total T, like I said, because many things can give you high total T and poor androgen status, right? Don't even get me started with the whole androgen receptor thing. So that's a huge high key sign. And if your free T is in the gutter, even though your total T is really, really high, then that would be a, bro, what the fuck are you doing? That is 100% a sign, of low carbs. But for now, I'll put it here because that's an extreme situation. Next, if you're experiencing strength loss, right? You've been training, you're doing everything right, but your strength is going down or it's plateauing for a long time, that is a sign of a low carb diet, right? It's very hard to maximize strength when you're eating low carbs. Very hard. Again, this is for naturals, right? I'm not referring to guys on TRT, which pretty much steroids. They're the exception to the rule. If you're natty, you notice your strength is going down, but you're doing everything else right, try increasing your carbs, again, while keeping calories the same, of course. Let's see. If you have low thyroid function, so low T3, low T4, whatever, especially high reverse T3, which is the bad one, then that is a high key sign of a low carb diet, right? So if you notice your metabolism is slow, you feel cold all the time, again, assuming that you also active, then you might want to increase your carbs, right? Carbs are very important for increasing T3 and your metabolism. Next, if you have low cognitive function, I'm going to put that at a low-key sign of a low-carb diet. And the reason I'm putting it at low-key and not higher is simply because it could be due to micronutrient deficiencies, could be due to poor sleep, could be due to, not getting enough sunlight. Believe it or not, that also helps with cognitive function. A lot of things could, impact cognitive function. So I'm not going to put that one higher. But if you're on a low-carb diet, you might want to look into this. Last but not least, if your cardio, your stamina sucks ass, I'm going to put that one at a high key sign. So to this tier list, nothing made it to the highest tier. Maybe the next one. But yeah, in fact, if I had to pick one thing here in bro, what the fuck are you doing? I would put this one. If your pump sucks, almost guaranteed, that almost guaranteed. What the fuck is rating breaking over there? But anyway, almost guaranteed that you're not getting enough carbohydrates. All right, guys. Hope this video helps. Glad to be back. Don't forget to join the SKOOL community while our price is still low. And see you guys in the next video.